You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. And you can catch us on wherever you listen to podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. If you want to know how our channels work, if you are that first-time listener, we bring you episodes Monday through Friday, 30-minute episodes, as well as some 60-second YouTube shorts after the games. And now we have a brand new Royals postcast, which is hosted by Chance Lebo, so different than me, of course. And he comes to you live after each and every Royals game. That continues into the weekend, and he'll go live for about 15 minutes, giving you his thoughts on the game. You ever want to reach us, again, just comment on this YouTube video or any of our YouTube videos. Tomorrow will be our Mailbag Friday. And then you can also just reach out to me directly on Twitter. Twitter is probably the easiest way to reach me if you really have an urgent question, but I still get the notifications here on YouTube if you do have a pressing question for tomorrow, which I imagine a lot of you do. And depending on what this team does this afternoon, it could be a very somber mailbag segment at the end of this week. And I don't blame anybody for giving up at this point. I don't blame anybody for being overly negative. You really don't have anything over the last 4 games, or really, with this being the 81 game mark today, you don't have a ton of positives to talk about. At least, the tail end of this first half stretch has not been very pretty. I mean, as early as last week, we were talking about a team that had won 4 in a row, had just taken game 1 in San Diego, and felt they could maybe take a series against the Padres before coming back home for a very difficult series, or homestand, I should say, against the Rays and the Dodgers. They haven't done that, and the offense has disappeared yet again. And I was out there at Kauffman Stadium. I was there to cover the game last night, and there was only one inning where either team did anything, and it wasn't anything flashy. The Rays used 3 infield singles and 2 bunts that were executed perfectly. Walker told us in the postgame afterward they're 2 of the best bunts that he's ever seen. Maybe that was just a little bit of recency bias involved because they both scored runs. But the Rays just used small ball in the way the Royals used to scratch across their 3 runs. And Drew Rasmussen and the Rays bullpen were able to shut down the Royals and only hold them to 3 hits. And it's just so it's becoming common, I should say. I shouldn't say it is so common. It's becoming so common that this inconsistency is becoming a major crux of this team's success. Now, what I'm meaning by that is this. All season long, the offense has struggled, but we've seen those spurts of they have 4 games in a row where the offense starts to play pretty well, and then they disappear for 4 games. Then they might show up for a game or 2. Then they disappear for 5 more. And that inconsistency, as we talked about in yesterday's episode, it's just never going to be a recipe for success. You can't do that for 162 games and expect to be a playoff team when it's all said and done. And the second segment of today's show is going to be centered around, do they have time, right? 38 and 42, 4 games under 500, and they have a 3.5 game deficit from a playoff spot. So do they have time in these final 82 games to make something happen? And that's going to be something that we dive into. But for this first segment, the big question is, what can they do? When we were down in the clubhouse last night, it was a very quiet clubhouse. There wasn't a lot going on, and you don't expect them to after you've been shut out 3-0. It's a team you're chasing in the American League wildcard race. And, I would say that there are certain things you can do, and there hopefully can be some things that you can do over the next few weeks to better this team. But we know that we are still about a month and a few days away from the trade deadline. And I'm not saying the Royals have to make all of their moves by then, because once the calendar flips to July, that's when some teams might be a little bit more aggressive. That's when some of those teams that might be on the fence of buying or selling will go into a full sell mode. And for the Royals' position and where they're at right now, They're not the White Sox and they're not the Rockies, where there's nothing you can do in the next month to change the fact that you are going to be a seller. They are one of those teams, though, that are on the fence. And JJ Picollo said 2 days ago that they will be open to absolutely everything. If they're going to be a buyer, then they're going to try to go out there and acquire some bats for this lineup to help them get to the finish line. If they're a seller, they're going to have to look into moving some of those pieces to acquire some offensive help. And as we discussed in one of our episodes last week, there is that gray area too. There's that middle ground of doing what the Tigers did last year, where they sold Jack Flaherty and got Trey Sweeney and another prospect in return. And no, Trey Sweeney has not been what the Tigers had hoped for, but that type of logic is not a bad way of thinking at all. That logic can still give you a little bit of a push into the second half. And that's what should be seen as a good thing for the Royals, where if they are acquiring talent, I don't see them acquiring guys that are in high A or in double A. It'll be guys that are right on the cusp at the big league level, or they are at the big league level and they're ready to contribute right now. And for these moves they can make to try to help out the lineup, I mean, this goes hand in hand with the deductions from your roster. When you bring in talent, you're going to be looking to move some guys on out. And I'm seeing the lineup get posted every single day. And you have your constants out there. You know that Jonathan India is going to be out there. You know Bobby is, Vinny, Salvi, Jack Caglione, and Michael Garcia. The rest of those guys, it's coming down to crunch time here. I mean, how much longer can you go with Drew Waters in the lineup, or John Rave in the lineup, or Nick Lofton in the lineup, or Mark Canha playing against right or left-handed pitchers? How long can you go using those players? And I understand they are playing a good team in Tampa. They played a good team in San Diego. They played a good team in Texas. They have a really good team in the Dodgers that are coming up, who we're going to talk about in the final segment. And after that, doesn't end there. You've got Seattle. You've got Arizona. There are a lot of challenges ahead of you. And if those guys don't turn it around, well, to me, you have your answer. To me, you have your answer that those guys can no longer be the permanent players at that position. And I understand right now that there's nobody in AAA that you could call up to really solve things. And the John Rave situation should, give you your answer on if Cam Devaney can be a fit, if Joey Wiemer can be a fit, if Tyler Gentry can be a fit. It's not those guys can't become average to slightly above average big league players, but for where this team is at, for what they need, they are not the solution. And if you are somebody pounding the table for coaching changes, I can understand that. It is a results-based business, and it's what have you done for me lately? And the offense has not done it all season long. I mean, even Bobby Witt Jr. said last night, we can keep saying that we're on the cusp of breaking out, but it's been 3 months, right? It's been a long, long time since the last time we felt that this offense could hit its stride. And I go back even to last year in Houston when Vinny Pasquantino had his thumb fracture. That was probably when it all trended in the wrong direction. If you went back to that game and then translated it all the way to now, you would not have good numbers as a team. You would not have a high average, a high OBP, a high slug, a high OPS, a good walk rate. The only thing you would be doing well is not striking out a lot, but that's always been a philosophy for the Royals. And so if you go out there and buy or sell and you are bringing in talent, I feel you have your answer as to what you need to do. And we teased that a little bit at the tail end of yesterday's episode of you need to have a permanent left fielder and somebody that is not a below average bat. Kyle Isbell's defense is very, very solid. He is a top 10 center fielder when you just talk about defense. He's also OPSing under 500 in the month of June. He has one of the worst WRC pluses in the month of June. And as much as I would love to say, well, it is 1 month. He was hot in the month of May. He's been cold in the month of June. If you are going to get this offense rolling, you can't have that volatility. You have to have consistency offensively at numerous positions. You go look around all the playoff teams right now, they have more than 3 hitters with an OPS plus north of 100 in their lineup. They've got 5 or 6. And the Royals have to try to either add to that through buying if they feel they're close enough. JJ Picollo said that right now 500 is kind of that trajectory of getting into the postseason. But if you sell, I still believe you need to find your answers for the outfield. If you trade Seth Lugo and Lorenzen and a couple of bullpen arms, I'm looking for outfield bats that are blocked or just ready to make a debut at the big league level, and you put them there in the outfield for the rest of the year. You got to start planning to better this outfield, not just for the now, but for the future. Now, the next thing we're going to be diving into is if the Royals have enough time in the second half of the season to overcome all these struggles and become a playoff team that's not really worrying about a spot. We'll tell you about it next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. That's Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Well, it felt that last night there were a lot of people that felt that this might be the rock bottom, right? You have 8 consecutive home losses. You have not won a home game in the month of June, and they have 4 more opportunities against the Rays today at 1:10, and they have the Dodgers coming into town over the weekend. So the odds would tell you those aren't very good to snap this home losing streak. And baseball's random. Maybe they do. You know, they've got 4 shots here to win just 1 game, and the record, I believe, for a losing streak at Kauffman Stadium is 11. So if they were to lose all 4 of those games, they would set the new record. And the only team that was worth a darn that overcame a home losing streak that was over 8 games was the 2013 Royals. But they did not make the postseason. None of these teams that went on a losing streak that was 8 or more were able to make the postseason. But 2013 did finish 86 and 76, and they were in it all the way up until the very end. So, do they have the time? Do they have enough in the tank to get rid of these struggles, to add talent to this roster, to have some of these guys break out over 82 games? And I know what a lot of people are thinking, and there are 2 ways of going about this. The first one being 82 games is a long, long time. We've had an entire first half where there were plenty of ups and downs, and last year it was pretty much the same thing. Now, the Royals had far more ups in the first half than they did in this first half, but still, by the end of that first 81-game stretch, the Royals were starting to crumble a little bit, and there was the concern of, do they have enough in the tank to get to the finish line? And it's a team in a different spot right now, 38 and 42, 3.5 games back of a playoff spot. And last year's team, you know, I think the furthest they were out of a playoff spot at this point was maybe a half game. I mean, they were pretty much always in the hunt, and there were less teams fighting for a playoff spot than they are right now. And for me, I should say, the optimistic point of view would be that, man, it takes a good week to really put yourself back into the competition, to put yourself into the heat of the race. I mean, going into Saturday's game, we're talking a few days ago, the Royals were a half game out of a playoff spot. And I get people can be frustrated with that and say, well, we've done this now for 81 games. where, well, they're really close and now they're only 3 games back, and they're really close and now they're only 4 games back. And the only thing that's been constant is they've been very far from first place in the American League Central. But there is a point in time, too, to look at the opposite point of view and say, you have 81 games here. After today, it'll be 81 games, and they're either going to be 38 and 43 or 39 and 42. And I don't believe that's much of a difference. The only thing you'd be feeling good about is, hey, we snapped the home losing streak and we didn't get swept by the Rays, and we won the season series against the Rays. But record-wise, it's about the same thing to me. There'll be 3 games back of a playoff spot or 4 games back of a playoff spot, it feels like. But if you're going to go on the pessimistic side here, you've got a large sample size. And oftentimes in baseball, even though there's an entire half of season to play, you look at that first half and say, how much can they really improve without adding much talent, right? We can believe that Bobby Witt Jr. is going to be much better than a 280 hitter. We can believe that Jonathan India can get back to a league average bat. We can believe that Salvador Perez will turn things on, that Jack Caglione will become that bat that we all expect him to be long term. But there's also that world in which it doesn't happen. And a good buddy of mine, Joel Penfield, he does the One Royal Way podcast. He did a piece weeks ago about, is this just who they are? Is this the 2025 Royals? They are going to pitch well, but they are never going to have a good enough offense to truly be within striking distance. Striking distance is a term that can be defined in a few different ways. Striking distance for some people is like 5 games, 5 or 6 games. Again, a good week can put you into that wheelhouse of, oh, we're only 2 to 3 games back. But for a lot of people, striking distance is a game or 2 out, where a series can change the perception of where you are really at. And I don't want to say that, oh, the schedule softens, right? They're going to have a really good chance in August and September to just beat up on some bad teams. That might be the case. But when they got swept by the Athletics, they kind of lost that ability to say that. Of once we get through this gauntlet, we're really going to have a good opportunity to beat up on some bad teams. Because their tough stretch of games does not end after this week. They will get Seattle. They will get Arizona. They'll get the Pirates for 3 on July 7th through the 9th, but then they'll wrap up the first half against the Mets and in Kansas City. After that, they will get the Miami Marlins right out of the All-Star break, but then you have to go to Chicago and take on one of the best teams in the National League in the Cubs. You get the Guardians after that. That can't really be a focus of, well, we got to get through the rough stretch and then we're going to have a good opportunity to go on a tear. I remember last year, we talked about the Gauntlet 1 and Gauntlet 2. And once the Royals were able to just survive it, in the first gauntlet, they really didn't survive it. They got beat up pretty good. The second one, they were able to weather the storm a little bit because the other teams around them were losing. I don't really see a true gauntlet the rest of the way. It's just going to be about rattling off wins. It's going to be about getting hot when everybody else is cold. And they've been fortunate that in some really ugly stretches of baseball, some other teams have not buried them. No, Seattle has not buried them. Toronto and Tampa Bay are doing a good job of staying ahead of everybody else in the wild card race. But the Mariners, the Twins, the Guardians, the Red Sox, the Royals, they're all right there. The Rangers too. And nobody is buried from that group. So to ask the question, do they have time? Well, you have those 2 answers. You have those 2 sides there. Either you are on the side of, we know enough about this team, and I don't care if there's 140 games left. They are not going to be as good as they were last year. Or you're going to take the other approach and say that this team can make up 4 games in 82 games. They can make up that type of ground. It's not that simple, right? Because teams catch fire, and there might be a time where Seattle really gets hot or Cleveland really gets hot, and those 3 playoff spots are really solid for the better part of a month and a half or 2 months. And then the Royals are just scrambling just to remain in that conversation. But where things stand right now, I'm not sure that we can be talking about them as a buyer. We can talk about them as a playoff team. It really comes down to them just focusing on who's ahead of them in terms of opponent. We can worry about the wild card race and the wild card standings when they're a game out, if they ever get to that point, or a half game out. Right now, it's about snapping a losing streak. Right now, it's about getting to a level of consistency where you're taking at least one game, even in your worst series. You're not losing 4 or 5 games in a row every other week. Because if you do that, like I said, there doesn't matter if there's 140 or 150 games left. They're not going to have enough time to overcome that because that team would just simply not be that good. And the deadline will give you a true answer as to if there is enough time. If they trade away Seth Lugo and Michael Lorenzen and multiple bullpen pieces, well, even if they're 4 to 5 games back, they're not going to have the firepower to get to the finish line at that point. So, do you believe there's enough time left? Are you the optimist? Are you the pessimist? Let me know in the YouTube comments below. We'll take our final break of the show. When we come back, we'll preview the upcoming series against the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. If you're new to FanDuel, well, new customers can get $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. For my pick, since this episode will be out before the game, I'm going to take the over on hit total for Yandy Diaz, assuming that he will be in the lineup. I will take the over on hits for Vinny Pasquantino, and I will take the under on strikeouts for Michael Lorenzen. Well, the series on deck is not a series coming at a good time. The Los Angeles Dodgers, who have just been pounding teams left and right, their record really doesn't say how great they've been, and it's not a bad record by any means. I want to say they're 18 games above 500. Last time I checked, they just beaten the Rockies 8-1 last night, and ESPN's not loading for me right now, so I actually don't know if that is correct of the 18 games over 500. They're roughly around that. But they'll be coming into Kansas City at a time where the Royals are just not playing good baseball whatsoever. And baseball's weird. Baseball has its ways of surprising you. I don't know if the Royals lose today if I can go into this series and truly believe that. I always love to be proven wrong. Again, if you've listened to me long enough, you would know that I have no shame whatsoever in being incorrect on a pick. I will have no shame whatsoever in saying one thing and then something else, completely different happens. And so for this Dodgers series, sure, the Royals could go out there and take 2 of 3 and shock everybody, even though it wouldn't be as big of a shock as it was when the Athletics went into Dodger Stadium and swept LA. But with the way the Royals are playing, with the offense that the Dodgers have, man, it's going to be incredibly tough to find a way to win even one game in that series. Now, maybe you get some momentum going into this series. You win today with Michael Lorenzen on the bump, and you find a way to get the offense going, and then tomorrow night you turn around, hand the ball to Noah Cameron, who has pitched well in front of big crowds, and he's now pitched well in front of 3 big crowds, I believe. He'll get another one tomorrow night. This game will be on MLB Network, by the way, but Noah Cameron will be going up against Dustin May, and then you have a bit of uncertainty in this series. Seth Lugo and Chris Bubich are going to be going for the Royals on Saturday and Sunday. So if you wanted to feel like you had any shot of winning a series, winning Friday becomes very important. If you win on Friday, you hand the ball over to Seth Lugo, who's arguably been your hottest pitcher, and you try to go for a series win there. If you don't win that one, at least you can turn to Chris Bubich on Sunday. Like I said, I'm not going in there really even expecting one win with the way the Royals have been playing. I want to be proven wrong. I want that to be the series that sparks them because there's nothing that should be able to spark you more than winning a series against the LA Dodgers and Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani and Will Smith and that collection of all-star talent that they have. A lot of it comes down to today, in my opinion. If they get swept, how can I sit here and say they could rattle off a win or two in that series, other than baseball's weird and baseball's unpredictable? But as I said, the unpredictable part of this is the Dodgers do not have a starter listed for Saturday or Sunday. And that is one area they have really struggled. And that kind of goes back to our point about Seth Lugo. And I want to say we brought this up when discussing Seth Lugo and his trade interest and who the Royals could look to try to negotiate a deal with. Well, the Dodgers really need pitching and the Cubs really need pitching. And Seth Lugo gets an opportunity to shine in front of the Dodgers. And the Dodgers have some guys and some prospects that I feel would fit really nicely in Kansas City. But for this Dodgers rotation, you're going to see, and they might be able to stifle the Royals. I mean, a lot of bad rotations have been able to do so. And the Dodgers fully understand that for them to be back-to-back champions, they need a rotation. And they're going to be going all in. They're not going to be afraid to give up some pieces to add to that rotation. And the Royals this year have really struggled against teams that have a top 10 offense, which the Dodgers are number one. And it doesn't really matter where their pitching staff is. The Dodgers are bottom 10 in all of baseball. And it's been due to all of these injuries that they've suffered. Even their bullpen has been a little bit hit and miss from time to time. But their rotation is where it's at. And as you've seen me do these before, I give you the starters for each of those games, and I give you what they've done over their last 3, over their last 7. We really can do a deep dive. But the Dodgers have one starter listed, and that's Dustin May. And Dustin May has devastating stuff. I wouldn't call him a top 3 pitcher in the rotation, but really, who is right now for the Dodgers? They are so incredibly banged up. And maybe they're moving guys up, they're moving some pieces around to find the right starters for this series. But when they're healthy, they got Snell, they got Glasnow, they got Yamamoto, they got Sasaki, they have Kershaw, they got May. They're throwing a lot of guys out there. But that series will need to be one where the Royals pitching staff has to do the heavy lifting. Because if you can't keep that Dodgers lineup in check, it doesn't matter what Dustin May does. It doesn't matter if their opener on Saturday or Sunday, if they're even going that route, pitches well or not. Because this Dodgers lineup can hang 8 or 9 on you in all 3 games of this series. And for the Royals, I believe you have the guys you want going. You've got 2 lefties throwing, which helps you against Ohtani and Freddie Freeman, even though those guys can hit both pitchers. They can hit righties and lefties. But it might help you out a little bit there. Seth Lugo's the righty going in that series, but he's been your hottest pitcher of late. But a lot of it, in my opinion, is going to come down to today. If you win today and you find a way to snap that home losing streak, you can turn the page. Maybe you feel you've got the pitching matchups in all 3 of these games. I'm not sure you can do it with Noah Cameron and Dustin May, though Dustin May was, a flash in the pan when he was a rookie. He really burst onto the scene and has never stayed healthy since. And Noah Cameron's been very steady since debuting for the Royals this year. And then without a starter listed for Saturday and Sunday, I would like to think the Royals have the advantage with Lugo and Bubic going on those 2 days as well. But that's a series, in my opinion, that's just coming at the absolute wrong time. You never want to face the Dodgers at any point, even when you're playing well. But with the way the Royals have been playing, 4 straight losses, offense once again is nowhere to be found. Not sure you want to be facing this Dodgers team with the hot stretch that they've been on. It's the same thing with Tampa Bay. You caught them at a bad time. But baseball is a long season, and I don't really believe in you just running into a hot team. You got to beat them. You got to beat hot teams if you're going to consider yourself a hot team and get hot at the right time. And the Rays and Dodgers playing really good baseball. The Royals, not so much. We'll see what they do today. And more importantly, after today, we'll see if they can hang with the Los Angeles Dodgers in that 3-game set over the weekend. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, it'll be a Mailbag Friday, so be sure to leave your questions below. And you can look for my tweet a little bit later on this afternoon and send in your questions there. But until tomorrow, you take it easy, Kansas City.